Hey, we're from the St. Croix River Education District. I'm Nick.
I'm Courtney.
And I'm Rye.
We're talking about student engagement strategies, and one we're going to talk about here is one I'm particularly interested is using story structure or narrative structure as a framing mechanism for our lessons. And the reason why this even comes up is because there's a lot of research indicating that for some reason, I think it's because humans have been telling each other stories for so much of our history, our brains just soak up anything that's framed as a story. And they've done a lot of studies where they'll present information just kind of like in a random order, and then they present the same information in the form of a story, and we're so much better at remembering that. So anytime we can take advantage of that is really helpful. And most of this advice comes from a really good book, by the way. I think it's called Why Students Hate School by Daniel Willingham. He's a cognitive scientist. But he breaks down the 4 C's of story structure, because like the first way to use this, you kind of needed to know, what is a story? And there are conflict, causality, complications, and character. So those are 4 things that are part of making a story. So conflict is just having some like problem to overcome, like things aren't hunky-dory, like we've got to figure something out. Causality is like our actions have an effect. So if we try one thing, we might fail or we might succeed, or the characters might. Complications is like, well, if we try something and it doesn't work, it might have effects elsewhere, or like just things aren't going to work out easily. And character is just like having interesting characters involved. Like it's not just like a cardboard cutout of a knight. It's like a living, breathing person who has like idiosyncrasies and stuff. But conflict is the most important, and it's the one I really want to focus on, because you might, even at this point in this video, be wanting to tune out and just say, well, like, I teach physics to 10th graders. Like, how am I going to tell a cute little story to present physics content, right? So integrating this, conflict is a great place to start. And one way you can do it is just building that anticipation at the beginning of a lesson or a unit by just presenting the dilemma. And that's conflict right there. Like, if you go back to the person who invented a concept, because most of what we teach, somebody somewhere, a mathematician or a writer, came up with a concept, you can say like, well, this was the problem, and this is the person who came up with a solution, and this is like the first thing they tried, and it didn't work out for this reason. And this is another way they tried to solve it, and it didn't work out for that reason. Even if you don't have that history, you can just make it immediate. You can be like, well, here's a dilemma or an issue someone might have, kind of like a math word problem. You could even use one of those. Like, if someone was in this situation, how would they go about solving that? Like, that's conflict right there. And it becomes more narrative because we're on the journey together of just trying to discover the solution to that problem. So it's just even that like simple little framing mechanism can be really helpful. If you're an elementary teacher, you're more likely to have this as an option of just using narrative texts like a storybook that relate to what you're talking about in a unit. And you could use those at the end of a unit to kind of tie things up, or at the ending of a lesson. You could use it like when we come back from recess to get everyone's attention back in. If you can find like a storybook that relates at all to what we're covering next in our curriculum, read through that storybook, and that captures students' attention, and then you naturally transition to the curriculum content. All right, guys, thanks for your time. Have a good one.